Hello and welcome. You're watching another episode of A Deep Dive with me, Vineet Malhotra. Today we are delving into the Ukraine oil tanker attack. A Russian-linked oil tanker, Virat, issued a frantic mayday call after being struck twice by Ukrainian unmanned naval drones in the Black Sea in what Kyiv says is a deliberate campaign to choke Moscow's shadow fleet used to skirt Western oil sanctions. Ukrainian naval drones hit two oil tankers from Russia's so-called shadow fleet as they traveled through the Black Sea. Footage shows that waterborne drones speeding through the waves into the vessels before detonating into a ball of flame, sending back smoke into the air. Naval drones could be seen speeding towards hulking tankers, followed by powerful explosions that caused fires on the vessels. Video shows that after being hit, both tankers sustained critical damage and were effectively taken out of service. The targeted tankers were named by Turkish authorities as the Kairos and Virat, both flagged to the Gambia. Both were hit off the Turkish coast on Friday, with the Virat reportedly struck again on Saturday. Meanwhile, no casualties were reported. Ukraine has been attacking Russian oil refineries for months now, using long-range aerial drones to strike far behind the front lines of Moscow's full-scale war against Ukraine. The strikes on the tankers represent a different kind of attack. The attacks appear to be an escalation by Kyiv as it tries to hit Russia's oil revenues, which are critical for funding its war in Ukraine. Moreover, naval drones are uncrewed speedboats packed with explosives that sail towards their targets before detonating. They played a prominent role in Ukraine's counter-offensive in the Black Sea, helping to push back Russia's large fleet of warships. The two ships are reportedly part of Russia's shadow fleet, a term that refers to the hundreds of tankers used by Russia to bypass Western sanctions imposed after its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Well, the shadow fleet is largely made up of aged tankers, many with obscure ownership or insurance. The 274-meter-long tanker Kairos was struck in the southwest area of the Black Sea, and the Virat in the central area further east. Both are on a list of ships subject to sanctions, and according to London Stock Exchange data, the Virat was reportedly struck about 35 nautical miles offshore, further east in the Black Sea. That ship was attacked again on Saturday by unmanned vessels, sustaining minor damage to its starboard side above the waterline. The attack employed Sea Baby drones, a type of naval drone produced by Ukraine security services known as the SBU. Turkish authorities said that they had been assisting the vessels and released footage showing two Turkish boats trying to extinguish the fire on the Kairos. The incidents occurred inside Turkey's exclusive economic zone, prompting Ankara to warn of serious navigational risks and to contact multiple parties to prevent escalation in the Black Sea. The attacks are seen as a warning by Ukraine, suggesting that ships carrying Russian oil in the Black Sea face the risk of direct attack, not just Western sanctions. Separately, a major consortium transporting oil from the Caspian region said it had suspended loading in the Russian Black Sea port of Novorossiysk after an attack by unmanned boats overnight. The Caspian Pipeline Consortium, which handles more than 1% of global oil, said that the attack had caused significant damage to a mooring point. Russia and Kazakhstan are major stakeholders in the company, which is also part owned by Western firms including ExxonMobil, Chevron and Shell. Kazakhstan's foreign minister Abek Smadiyarov expressed his indignation with the attack, which he said was the third of its kind. He said that Kazakhstan attached a particular importance to ensuring a stable and uninterrupted energy supply, and the incident had harmed relations between his country and Ukraine. He also added, calling on Kyiv to take concrete measures to prevent the recurrence of such situations. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky said on Saturday that a delegation led by top security official Rustem Umerov was on its way to the US to continue talks on an agreement to end the war. Umerov is set to lead the Ukrainian delegation as previous lead negotiator. Zelensky's influential chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, resigned after anti-corruption detectives searched his apartment on Friday. The Ukrainian delegation is expected to meet U.S. officials in Florida on Sunday, and Steve Witkoff, U.S. President Donald Trump's overseas envoy, will hold talks in Moscow next week. When we talk about the Virat oil tanker, the tanker is involved in the export of Russian oil from Russian ports in the Baltic Sea and Black Seas, mainly to India, Turkey and other third countries, and uses the practice of disabling AIS in the Black Sea near Kherson region. On the 10th of January 2025, USA imposed sanctions on the vessel. From July 20, 2025, the EU imposed sanctions on a tanker for transporting crude oil and products that originate in Russia or are exported from Russia using irregular and high-risk shipping practices. As of July 21, 2025, the vessel's registered name is Virat, flag of Barbados. At the same time, the vessel sails under the flag of Comoros. On the 12th of August 2025, Switzerland imposed sanctions on the vessel, and in August 2025, Ukraine imposed sanctions on the tanker's master. Since September 12th, 2025, the United Kingdom has imposed sanctions on the vessel. In November 2025, Canada imposed sanctions on the vessel as well. Both Kairos and Virat are part of a network of aging, lightly regulated tankers used to move Russian crude despite sanctions. Many operate with murky ownership structures and frequently switch flags. Ukraine has urged Europe and the US to impose sleeper restrictions on the fleet, which Kyiv says continue to generate billions in revenue for Moscow. Russia sends oil via a shadow fleet of hundreds of tankers to various countries, with China and India being the largest crude oil buyers. While precise numbers fluctuate, estimates of the shadow fleet range from 300 to 600 tankers by early 2025, with a total of 1,100 to 1,400 ships by late 2023. The specific number of countries receiving oil is not static due to sanctions and fluctuating global demand, but includes China, India, Turkey, amongst others. This comes ahead of Russian President Putin's visit to India on the 4th of December, which is next week. Major General Dr. G.G. Dwivedi, Global and Strategic Defense Expert, with us on the program, is joining us on the broadcast to talk more about this. General Dwivedi, always a pleasure to speak to you, sir. So, what do you make of this attack, and what does this do for the aspirations that Russia has, especially when it comes to its war against Ukraine, which it indefinitely wants to continue?
Thank you, Vineet. Always a pleasure to be on your show, and I'm glad that you are covering a very sensitive topic, and also you are given a very detailed background. Now, firstly, this type of actions or activities are what we can call the gray zone warfare on the seas, which primarily targets the mercantile shipping and, in particular, the oil tankers, as you have rightly brought out. Now, the point is that Russian shadow fleet is today a very sizable in numbers. Almost 11 to 1400 tankers or oil carriers are operating, and they operate as a shadow fleet to avoid the detection or avoid the policing, because they are under sanctions from the G7 and also from the European countries. Now, this is one of the major oil revenues is to, as Russia fights the war, the oil revenue is a major contribution to its security. Now, these attacks are orchestrated, and also Ukraine has claimed that they are the state actors which are orchestrating the attacks, and these attacks can be either they lay the mines or underground explosives, and in this case, the underwater or the sea drones are actually the ones which are being used as a tool to target the shipping. Now, in this, I think few points that merit consideration. First and foremost, mercantile shipping is today under threat or attacks, especially when it comes to the carriers which are transporting oil by Russia. The second is the sanction per se, because sanctions can only be imposed when there is strict mechanism. But ironically, not much enforcement action has taken place. Only very selectively ships have been impounded, and they have been actually targeted. And the last point is that this activity is going to continue. It's not new. In fact, initially also Venezuelan tankers and the Iranian tankers have been operating as part of the shadow fleet. So Russia has only upped the ante, and they are actually doing it in very big way. Incidentally, India also imported about 5.4 million tons of oil from January to September 2025, and we are one of the big importers, but our imports are coming down. So, Vineet, all I can say is that this is a new form of gray zone warfare on the sea, and here the targeting is basically the Russian oil ships carrying oil, and Ukraine is carrying out this warfare to cause damage to the ships and ensure that the Russian oil revenue actually gets the pinch. Vineet.
General Dwivedi, always a pleasure having you, sir. Thank you so much for your time and your perspective on this important, game-changing modus operandi which is being employed by Ukraine to target Russian oil tankers. We take a short break on that note. We'll be right back.